that's really been my bow hunting experience. It just seemed cool. So I went and bought a bow, and I didn't do hours and hours of research and watched all these YouTubes. I didn't think to do that. I was just like, well, if I'm going to learn this, I got to get it in my hands. I got to start shooting. And that's been, I thought about it this morning as I was prepping for this. I was like, that has been everything I've done ever. I mean, beekeeping. We've done beekeeping for 10 years, and we just kind of jumped in. I think I picked up a book, and I was like, wow, I should probably like do some research, but I didn't find out I was allergic to bees till 8 years in, until my throat was closing up because I got stung so many times.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the RedBeard Outdoors podcast. I'm Jonathan, your host, and here at RedBeard Outdoors, we talk about faith, family, fitness, and the outdoors. Today, we have a fantastic guest. Today being Saturday, we have the longer episodes where we bring a guest on. They get to tell you their story. In this case, we've got Adam Buchanan from BlackOvis. He's also got First Generation Bowhunter. Definitely go check out both of those places over at BlackOvis. You're going to get some amazing gear, guys. Right now, Peaks is launching things over and over and over again throughout this summer, getting you ready for the season. And you can get your stuff from Peaks at BlackOvis with discount code RedBeard10. Definitely recommend going and checking that out. And of course, it supports here at the channel. Really appreciate that, guys, so that we can continue to do this and provide content for you guys as things hopefully you've noticed. Hopefully it continues to get better for you as I strive to add more and more for you. So you can go back and search it later. Maybe if you're looking to buy a gear item, you can do that. Or just enjoy these conversations like today with Adam. So we got the Tuesday, Tinkering Tuesdays, and then every other Thursday we have an episode of Why First Phorm Outdoors for someone in the community, why they've chosen First Phorm to be their partner in their fitness journey, their outdoors journey, and what they enjoy doing. So with all that being said, guys, I'm super excited to bring Adam on to the podcast. He's got a great story to tell. He's a great individual, and I've really enjoyed being his friend over the last couple years as we hunt in similar areas. And of course, we enjoy gear, which is why he works at BlackOvis and why BlackOvis is a partner of the show. With that being said, guys, tune into this episode, and maybe while you're listening, go look up some things over at BlackOvis and get those last-minute purchases so you can get them before archery season, before rifle season, whatever it is that you have this year. I'd actually be interested to know. Drop a comment down below if you're listening to this on YouTube or watching this on YouTube. Drop a comment. Let me know what hunts you have this year. I'm really excited. I'm not asking you for areas. Just let me know what you got going on so I can root for you as well, because your success is what I want. So now let's get into the conversation here with Adam Buchanan from BlackOvis. Welcome back to the RedBeard Outdoors podcast. I'm Jonathan, your host, and here today I've got a fantastic guest for you guys. We've got Adam Buchanan, and Adam and I have had we were building this friendship, even though we're like right next to each other here in Bountiful, Utah. We're right close. We've never really gone on a hunt together, but we've been texting back and forth. We share some spots. He's an awesome individual. He's got a family. He works at BlackOvis. I don't know the official title, but he's some head of marketing over at BlackOvis. We'll get into the title there. And he's also got a podcast as well, the First Generation Bowhunter, which we share that in common, of course, him being a first generation bow hunter and myself as well. And so there's so many things that I want to share with you guys. We've been working on getting Adam on the podcast for a while at this point. We just live such busy lives. Right. And but with that being said, Adam's just a great dude. Wanted to bring him on, share his journey with you guys, what he does, and introduce you to him. So with that, Adam, who are you, man?
All right. Yeah, we have gone back and forth for a while, and it is funny how, like, what are we, 10 minutes, 15 minutes from each other? So it's pretty cool that we share that. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so who I am, I always like to tell people that I grew up in New Mexico, and I am the youngest of 6, a little bit of a black sheep of my family. And so I really just entered the outdoors at a very young age. I mean, the moment I could drive, I was getting my car stuck up in the mountains in Colorado, skiing in Durango, and that sort of thing. And and rock climbing. Did a lot of rock climbing, and it was kind of funny. Like, I am very much a way I would describe myself is like I kind of fire and then aim, and you'll kind of hear that, I think, in our discussion today. And what I mean by that is I kind of jump into things and I don't do a ton of research, and that's really been my bow hunting experience. Was it just seemed cool, so I went and bought a bow, and I didn't do hours and hours of research and watched all these YouTube. I didn't think to do that. I was just like, well, if I'm going to learn this, I got to get it in my hands. I got to start shooting. And that's been, I thought about it this morning as I was prepping for this. I was like, that has been everything I've done ever. I mean, beekeeping. We've done beekeeping for 10 years, and we just kind of jumped in. I think I picked up a book, and I was like, wow, I should probably like do some research, but I didn't find out I was allergic to bees till 8 years in, until my throat was closing up because I got stung so many times. And so anyway, that's a little about me. And yeah, the podcast is fun, and I followed what you've been up to, and stoked to talk to you on the show.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then, of course, what's your title over there at BlackOvis?
Yes, marketing director.
Marketing director. So yeah,
yes,
yeah, awesome. So yeah, we again, we've been kind of chit-chatting back and forth about hunting. We share some similar spots, especially during late season archery deer, which you guys have heard me tell the story. We're actually remembering the story. It was a couple of years ago at this point, which is crazy to think how fast that time goes. But yeah, where I shot the deer and then was pretty sure that I'd shot it and didn't end up finding it. I spent time tracking it. There was no blood trail, no guts, anything like that to find it. Couldn't find the arrow, how thick the area was. And Adam was the one that I've said in the story repeatedly, sent me a text just out of nowhere, didn't know that I was really hunting in that area, and sent me the picture of the buck, and that's when I recognized that it was mine. Now, don't get me wrong, it was no trophy buck for you guys out there wondering, what the size. It was a little 2-point, so nothing huge. For me, it was trophy. I took the head home, put the tag on it, but yeah, Adam's the guy that found my buck for me because I obviously couldn't. So yeah.
We're very fortunate in Utah to have that extended archery season. And I think sometimes out west, we talk about it so much like it's just, oh yeah, this is a thing. And it's not a thing in a lot of places. The fact that we can hunt from like mid-October to the end of November, maybe even sooner than that. But anyway, we have this extended season. And for me as a bow hunter, I think I would have quit a long time ago if I couldn't have gone out so many times, where some people have like a 6-day window. And I'm like, 6 days a year? How can you really learn how to get in there? I mean, you can shoot your bow 365, that's fine, but bow hunting is a totally different thing, when you're out there. So I remember that day, and I'd gone out so many times and trying to find my own, animal to shoot. And, you'd shot in a buck in that area, and where I kind of hunt the Wasatch Front. I've just shot does. Honestly, I shot my first buck this last season. And so I was just that's my trophy, is just having a doe and being able to take an animal and do it right and go through that experience. So yeah, when I saw that, found that buck, I was super thick. That area actually is kind of wild. And so and I don't even know why. I think we'd just gone back and forth like once and kind of talking loosely about areas. And so when I found it, I was just like, oh, I wonder if he knows anybody, in the area. And you shot it back to me and was like, yeah, that's mine. Holy cow. And I was excited for you. I was just like, I know what that's like to not recover an animal. It's a rough emotional feeling.
No, I definitely understand that. And thanks to you, I am 100% on recovering my animals. So that would have been my first. Yeah, that would have been my first one, not being able to recover it. And and so that you're right. It does sting. And it makes you second guess. Like, I don't have a camera crew on me. I don't have someone slowing down, like watching the footage back, in my head. I swear I hit it, but I could have missed them. Like, who knows? And you know, and actually it's kind of funny. Right after I shot that deer, a guy was coming up the hiking trail and was like asking me to take some pictures because it was just a beautiful sunrise. It was
Sure.
fresh snowfall. It was just a gorgeous day. And so we were chatting back and forth. And so like all of that gets mixed in, plus the excitement of like for me, and maybe I just haven't been around a big enough animal yet or shot at a big enough animal, but I get these like when I shoot, and we can go into, let's actually go into this whenever we shoot because people react differently. I feel like I'm weird in the fact that I don't get target panic until uh after I've shot, and it's like I get this dump of just chemicals that hit me. But when I'm in the moment, it's almost like my ears get plugged. I don't hear ringing, but like someone puts earplugs in, and I get this horse blinder effect where it just like tunnel vision narrows it down to my scope and what's my target and what's beyond it, and I'm just good to go. And then I get this dump. So for me, when I shot that animal, watching the arrow, I could have sworn I saw it go through its hide. It kicked like a mule. The snow flew off his back, and then I turn around. I'm talking to this guy. I have that chemical dump, kind of shaking a little bit. So like, you know, I'm like maybe I misremembered. But then, you know, again, I'm really glad you found that because that definitely it was bittersweet because I didn't get to recover the meat, and I pride myself in I don't kill things I'm not going to eat. Unless they're coyotes, and we can go into that, you know, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, with archery hunting, what's your experience? I want to hear from you being a first generation bow hunter. You know, we didn't have people that taught us sitting in a tree stand or going out in the mountains and hunting with a bow, maybe rifles or other weapons, but archery is just so different.
Yeah.
Why did you pick it up, first of all? And then how did you get the training that you needed once you bought the bow and realized this isn't as easy as some other weapons? I need to learn. You know?
Trading is so generous. Thank you.
Mhm.
That was a very nice word. Very generous compared to what I went through. The reason why I bought a bow, truthfully, two reasons, and I find being transparent with this is one, I just got a job at Cabela's, and so I was leaving Columbia Sportswear in Portland, Oregon, and I'd been hired by Cabela's over in Denver to work out of their digital office. And I first thought, I was like, I got to get a bow. Like, I need to get a bow. And the second reason was the massive rise in Disney movies of archery. You had Brave at the time, you had Hunger Games, which isn't Disney. The bow, like archery within media, was massive at that point. And I just remember seeing this, not that I watch a lot of Disney movies, but I have children, so you know,
Yeah.
I probably watched a few more than I probably admit. and I just remember thinking like, that's cool. Like, no Disney movie is ever going to show the character, the hero's journey of them with a rifle, right? Or a handgun. But a bow is kind of free game, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, let's think about Mulan for a second. They had those weird firecracker cannons. I think that's the closest to like a
well,
firearm.
I mean, Beauty and the Beast, you've got Gaston, which he's the bad guy. It's interesting because you watch that movie, and now that I've grown up, I'm like, you know, honestly, he really wasn't like he was trying to protect, the hot chick in the neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
And she didn't want his attention, so that makes him kind of the bad guy. But he was trying to protect the town from this monster, you know, and he was a hunter, so he was portrayed as a bad guy. But if you kind of look at it from a different perspective, you're like, he obviously took care of his health. He's jacked. He's a hunter, so he eats clean.
Yes.
And what's really, other than he was kind of forcing his attention on Belle, outside of that, I don't know. I don't look at him as so much of a bad guy anymore, you know?
Yeah, and he was very much portrayed that way, and really,
Yeah.
you could even argue he was predator hunting.
Yeah,
So
he was bear hunting basically. Yeah.
yeah, it's exactly. And so no, it's interesting how that media kind of taps at you for so long. And there was just something at that time period. I was like, yeah, I want a bow. And it was just it was so just like I've got to get one in my hands. This looks and feels right. And so went to a pawn shop, dropped $100, $150 or something, bought this little Bear lights out bow. And I was like, yep, that one. And he's like, you want that one? I'm like, yep, that one. I mean, that is my extent of my buying experience. It was just like, I don't care. I was in that pawn shop maybe 4 minutes, right? Like it took more time to swipe my card. And I just had it in my hands. And man, when I had it in my hands, I put it in the backseat of my car, my Subaru Outback at the time. I just was thinking, there's something coming here, and I don't know what it is, but I am super like something's going on. And if someone was to tell me like, hey man, in 10 years, like you'll have taken this many animals and you've gone out hunting this time, you're going to start a podcast, like we, fast forward a little bit. I wouldn't have thought that. I just thought this is going to be a really fun hobby, and I'm just jumping into it. Mm-hmm. So those are the two main reasons. And then when I joined Cabela's, just that whole thing. I mean, it was really good. I bought a bow because the day that I joined, my boss, Andrea Grant, just like one of the greatest humans, we go to the Sydney Cabela's in Nebraska, and we're there, and she's like, hey, let's go to the range. And I had my bow with me. She's like, do you have your bow? And I said, yeah. And she asked me, do you have your bow? Not, like I gave you a heads up, you need to go buy a bow. It was, do you have your bow? It was a very, it was
understood.
It was just understood. And I was just like, yes, I have a bow. I have my bow. And so we went
you go
and shot.
Draw it back and you're like,
yeah. But like by then I'd figured out the releases. I got some arrows cut, all of that. And
not fiberglass arrows. You were shooting carbon or aluminum.
I was shooting carbon expresses that I bought at Walmart.
Perfect.
And so I go and I hit this really sweet pattern. And she was like, oh, you're pretty good. And I was like, oh yeah, like I just picked it up and I'm just getting, and I was honest. I was like, I just picked it up and I'm getting into this, but it felt really important. But we would go shoot at lunch once a week. Like it was just dudes going out for happy hour. I mean, it was very common. So that's why I did it and fumbled through it. I mean, even working for a hunting company, I still like no one was stopping and being like, Adam, this is how you bow hunt. It's funny how people may look at my career like, oh, you've been so immersed in hook and bullet and outdoor. Doesn't mean anyone sat down with me and taught me. It just means that's what I did for work. It's two very compartmentalized things.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. So with that, what did you do for, like, you're obviously self-taught. How did you self-teach? Like YouTube? Did you just watch other people? Fake it till you made it? Like what?
I just started pulling the arrow back and just flinging arrows. And then I even like the sight. This was just mind-boggling how I approached this. I didn't understand how the sight worked, that you adjust it to follow your arrow. And so I was just flinging arrows and I'm just like, okay, something's not right here. I didn't even think, I mean, this was what, 2009, 2010? I wasn't even thinking like, oh, I should go on YouTube. I mean, I'm sure Dudley was on there. I'm sure there was others on there who are just like, here's 16 hours of information. Like, dude, all I had to do was punch it into the internet. It was trial and error. It was totally trial and error. And I was so interested in it and I felt so strong about it that I just kept doing it. But the thing is, and this is what's interesting about archery and bow hunting, is you will see those little inklings of success. Like if I wasn't seeing success, I probably would have been like, no, I really want to crack this. I got to go talk to somebody. But later on, like when I really actually got out in the field and I was bow hunting, it was very common for me to call somebody, like a brother-in-law or somebody. And I'm like, okay, here's what happened. How do I digest this information? And they would break it down. They'd be like, well, your wind was wrong, or your this was this or that. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. No YouTube could have taught me that because I didn't know what to type into YouTube. Like, hey man, I just went out for 4 hours. What went wrong? Enter. Like, there's no YouTube out there like that.
Yeah.
So
That's crazy.
I fumbled through it. I mean, seriously, if a camera crew was going to watch me, it would be embarrassing. I mean, it would be somewhat embarrassing. But I think a lot of people experience that as well, truthfully.
Mm-hmm.
But,
No, that's funny. That's really interesting. Because I definitely went down the rabbit hole, and I've been shooting, I guess, half as long as you, but I went way into it because I didn't want to look like I was okay with asking questions, but I didn't want to look dumb, especially walking into a bow shop. Like, I just went in and I was like, okay, what's windage and what's this and what's that? What's the arrow spine and what's the weight that I'm looking at? And, what are all these things? What are the different bow companies? And, all of that. I went down that rabbit hole before I even walked into Wild Arrow the first time. And so it's interesting to hear that we had very different experiences going into it. You were just kind of like, all right, we'll just shoot from the hip and we'll just see how it goes. And, that confidence probably kept people from making recommendations. And I, honestly, on the range sometimes, I don't, even in like Wild Arrow or places that I go frequently, I don't like to tell people they're doing it wrong unless I hear them actively complaining about something or, saying, oh, I don't know, or like just making those sounds of frustration, and then even then I don't go over and like, oh, you should do this. Like, I'd start a conversation with them and get to know them a little bit before I'm just like, hey, your grip is wrong, or hey, this is because honestly, I can't remember who, I don't know if it's Joel Turner or Dudley, someone that's got a lot more shooting experience than me, has said it doesn't real like it. What it comes down to is being able to repeat what you can do over and over again. And I think for me, because I didn't have any bad habits going into it before I did get linked up with Joel Turner, watching Dudley, watching Dan Staten and MFJJ, and getting the feedback from the bow shop, I went in as a blank slate, open to any feedback. And so I was able to form really good habits from the beginning. But I also look at people that I hate when people are like, you're doing it wrong, to people that are doing it different. And I'm like, and I look at those people, I'm like, yeah, but you may say he's doing it wrong, but he's killed twice as many animals as you. So maybe don't go into the conversation that way. And so I hear what you're saying is like, no one really gave you that feedback, but also if you were hitting good groups, they're probably like, all right, well, as long as he's repeating that, it probably doesn't really matter whether he's doing it different than us that maybe have been shooting longer than him,
Yeah, like someone could have looked at my wrist and been like, dude, seriously, a Velcro, true ball? Like, come on, and oh man, like a Walmart arrow. I've killed like 3 animals with Walmart arrows, like $4.97 Carbon Express arrows when I was super early. And, early on too, when I had that first kill, I mean, that adrenaline hit and everything. And then after, I remember on my drive home, I just thought, I've got to sell my rifle. I've got to sell my rifle setup. I really like this. I know there's better bows out there. I want to upgrade, But what's funny about, I had that same experience. I've walked into Wild Arrow, same thing, really amazing shop right next to it. It's actually, we could probably meet in the middle, actually. It's right between us. And I've taken the approach now when I walk into Wild Arrow, and I somewhat still do this even though I know more, but I'll wear this shirt. Like, I'll walk in there and I just proudly wear this shirt, and I'll go in, I'll talk to Jeremiah or whoever, and I'm just like, listen, I'd like these arrows fletched. And they're like, hey, well, do you want right helical or left helical, or do you want this or that and the other? And I said, listen, I don't know. I am putting my experience in your hands. Here's what I do, and here's how much I shoot. No, here's what bow I'm shooting. Like, here's what I am. What would you do if you were me? And there's like, got it. But the guy that goes in there is like, oh man, well, whatever. I just don't have time to fake it. And I remember walking in one time, I saw Brian Call in Wild Arrow, and he's over there at the bench. And I walk in, I've got the shirt, and I've met Brian a few times. We used to work out at the Mountain Ops gym together. I walk in, and he looks at me, and he's like, "Are you a first generation bow hunter?" You know, and like he said that to me, and I was just like, "Yeah, Brian." Like I am.
Actually, I am. Yeah,
I actually am. And when you hear me talk and go in there, I'm just still kind of like in learning mode. Like I've learned what questions asked. But my favorite joke that I have with Jeremiah when I walk into Wild Arrow, and I'll say this in front of a few people, is I always make sure there's someone else around. I'd be like, "Hey, Jeremiah, do you have any more of those exploding broadheads?" and it's just like my favorite thing ever. And he's always like, "Oh yeah, man, like let me go out back, let me go dig into the inventory."
That's awesome.
And people kind of look, they're like seriously?
What?
So
Well,
but I
it's
also
like
think too, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's like the Nosler Montana Knife Company joke last year. Oh my gosh, that thing, and it still comes around every once in a while where but man, there was so many people that because Nosler, and the thing is, what people don't know is that Nosler actually made 3 of them to put in a 3-pack so they could, it wasn't all CGI. They actually made some, they took a bullet, they cut it open, put blades in the side of it, and then put a screw in bottom on it just so that they could have actual physical versions of that. And I was like, I would actually not mind shooting one of those. Like it's a dull tip, so you probably wouldn't get much penetration. But no, it's man, that's hilarious. So the exploding broadheads, that's a good one. But no, I think there's something to be said about being able to go in and have that kind of experience. I guess there's times where you can get overloaded with information. Like you're saying, you've killed multiple animals with Walmart arrows. Now, when I think Walmart arrows, I think the fiberglass ones that come with the kids' bows. I didn't realize they sold Carbon Express. Carbon Express used to be like top of the line arrow.
Yeah.
And now they're not so much. But honestly, as long as you get a component that's going to hold up to going through an animal, like you don't have to go out and spend all this money getting the nicest victory arrows. Now, don't get me wrong, it is nice to shoot a flagship bow. It's just you could tell, like when you pick it up, you could tell the quality is there. There's a reason why it costs as much as it does. Same thing with victory arrows. I could trust my victory arrows over like a Carbon Express arrow personally if I'm shooting a lot. If you don't shoot a lot or you're just shooting into a target, you don't need to go and buy the nicest, top of the line stuff. And don't go and crush yourself, and your bank account because you want to shoot what, Chris B, Dan Staten, John Dudley shooting, right? Get into it, maybe with a little bit more education than Adam. Don't just walk into a bow shop and get lucky.
Totally fair.
Yeah.
Totally
but
fair.
Maybe you do get lucky. Maybe you do. But there's so many resources out there now. People that you can reach out to, yourself included. You can, reach out to Adam, reach out to me. I love having conversations with people. And I'll tell you flat out, I'm not an expert. I'm still learning, but this is what I have learned up to this point, and this is what has worked for me. And I'm excited for the next 10 years as I continue to learn and I share that experience with my kids and other people as well. And that's the big reason why you and I both started podcasts, was because we love having those conversations and sharing that adventure and learning experience, and not being ashamed to say we're not experts. We're not the John Dudley that's been shooting for decades. We're here learning, and we want to share that with you and have those conversations. So I do love that. And being proud to say you're a first generation bow hunter instead of pretending like, you're some badass individual that's out there,
For sure.
So that's awesome.
And I think a little bit of myself too, my background, I was raised by a clinical narcissist, and that causes a lot of insecurity to go into a place and say, I'm not an expert, or I'm this or that, or I'm not this or that. And so this podcast that I started 2 years ago, First Generation Bowhunter, was, and I didn't realize this until just recently, is that was actually a very major healing process for me to overcome those insecurities. Because when you are raised by a narcissist, it's very difficult to speak up and say, well, wait, I have a question, or wait, I want to share my opinion. You get shut down very, very quickly. It's their way. There is no highway. It is just their way. I mean, and they don't give you an option or a plan B. And so by exposing that, what's interesting is, this community of these first generation bow hunters kind of come out. I think they were always there. It's just no one said, hey, this is a thing, and it's okay that it's a thing. And that has been a really cool interaction as I've met with others. And I am in that corner of the internet that maybe not a lot of people hang out in. I'm not going to attract somebody away from Meat Eater or Cam Hanes or whoever. Well, actually, that's not true. So I got one of the most interesting messages I got was someone said, I had like a 12-hour stint of travel upcoming, and I just wanted to dump a bunch of podcasts about hunting. And I wanted to go get the new Keep Hammering Collective podcast. And I was searching, and this first generation bow hunter thing came up, and I said, yeah, that's me. Like, I'm actually more that than I am a Cam Hanes or a Keep Hammering guy. And he says, I listened to 22 first generation bow hunter episodes, and I never got to Cam's podcast. And so that to me says there is a place for the underdog, and there is a need for that, of vulnerability, and being like, yeah, man, like, let's have that open conversation of what happened with the wind, what happened with the adrenaline dump, because you don't really get that. And so anyway, there's that interesting little dissection there.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that as well. And there's you go to the Cam Hanes podcast for something. You go to your podcast for something. You go to we're talking about Huberman. We go to his podcast for something. And it's all for different, you want to feel different, I guess, involvement, or you want to learn different things when you go to each one. Cam Hanes is definitely a pump you up, motivational, get some high level performing individuals, and kind of be on a fly on the wall while you're listening to him and David Goggins go at it, versus, you come to your podcast and you're wanting to learn something from the perspective of a first generation bow hunter, someone that is new to the sport and is okay with saying, I'm not perfect. I am learning. I am growing. And you're still in that process, versus at the end of that process where now you're out there killing Alaska brown bear with a bow. There's different levels to this, right? And so you definitely, I agree with you on that. You definitely get different audience based on what you're putting out there. So with that, with your bow, so you talked us through your experience. You've now, killed multiple animals with a bow. You absolutely love bow hunting. I want to go back to what you were talking about, how we're blessed to have this extended season. So that was a big reason why I picked up a bow. There was multiple reasons, but that was a big one, was that you had more opportunity to get out and chase animals. And brief interruption here. Just wanted to remind you of a couple things. There's some amazing deals going on right now. If you're in the market for a new Digiscoping system, you've got a couple days left. I highly recommend you go and check out Ollin right now. They're doing 25% off on all of their setups. Plus, you can get entered in to win some amazing prizes on top of getting that awesome discount. So all you have to do is go over to allin.co and put in RedBeard as your discount code. That'll get you 25% for the next couple days. If you have any questions about it, shoot me a message over on Instagram, whatever you feel comfortable doing, maybe even an email, and I will get back to you and answer those questions. Also, guys, all of your purchases for your gear that I recommend, you can go find on BlackOvis. Either the camo that I'm using, you can go find over on Kryptek, or all the other gear, even some of the BlackOvis pants, their jackets, their base layers, all of those things. They're fantastic. I recommend going and checking them out and using code RedBeard10. Again, that will save you some money. They're going to get it shipped out to you as quick as possible, and hopefully before your hunts, of course, since you waited last minute to get your gear. And you're supporting us here at the show. Now let's get back into this conversation with Adam Buchanan. As long as you're, in my opinion, okay with failure, and failures in failed stalks, maybe even missing an animal, I'd rather have a clean miss than a wounded animal any day. But being okay with training a lot more than, nothing against rifles, but I could go pick up my rifle that I haven't shot in 2 years and be within a good, if not on target, at 500 yards, no problem, right? Whereas with a bow, if you put a bow down for 2 years, you go to draw that thing, it might be a little bit more stiff than you remember. It's your muscles aren't used to holding that tension. Trusting the float, you get in your own head. Like, there's so many things that happen with a bow. It's a little bit more intricate. So, going back to where you're saying that you didn't really get any formal training, what would you recommend for people that are getting into archery? What would be the preferred path? Other than going into a pawn shop and picking up $100 bow and then out shooting your boss? Like, what?
Yeah, exactly. Unique black sheep over here.
Yes.
I one of the biggest level ups that I ever really saw was going through the School of Knock with John Dudley, and just slowly kind of watching his videos and just stepping back. And maybe you've shot for a year, maybe you've kind of fumbled through it like I did, but I would direct people to him as quick as possible, because the way he talks about your foot, your stance, the other big, and he talks about this, but I also picked up this from an outfitter at Cabela's. I'm a couple years in, and I think the big thing is having someone watch you. A lot of people do this on Facebook. They'll get into an archery forum, they film themselves, and they say, hey, does anyone have any feedback? I think that's fine. I think in person is way better. I do tell people, you've got Dudley who can kind of get you, dial in some issues, maybe like wipe out the cobwebs a little bit. But the other one would be getting a coach. My number one podcast, my most popular episode, is What Bow, Arrow, and Broadhead Should I Buy? I think one of my second ones is it okay to buy a used bow? And I say yes, right? It's all about the gear. That is
spoiler alert.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, exactly. It's like people are so concerned with their gear, but when you get the gear and you're like, sweet, I'm all set up. A coach would be, so there's kind of a good, better, best, like having a friend watch you or whatnot. But this Cabela's outfitter, he said, hey man, pull back your bow. And I did, he's like, okay, a couple things going on here, and that's the thing is, being open to that. And he really taught me about squeezing the shoulder blades. I had not, thought about that. And then another time was at TAC. I picked up a really important tip from Kendall Card, my boss now, who I've known for almost 20 years, really good friend of mine. So I now work for him at Camo Fire and BlackOvis. And I'm at TAC, and he's like, hey man, hit that goat up there and hit the stick or whatever. And I do, and didn't really, my release was like this. And he's like, hey, do you know to like follow through? And I'm like, no, I've never heard that before. And he's like, yep, get another arrow. Just do me a favor. Just pull through. Just pull through. And I was like, oh, interesting. And it felt really good. But here's the other thing is, when you pick up a new tip, you will be shooting differently, right? And so there are some fundamental things on stance, release, squeezing shoulders, elbow. Like there is some, like, you can't just fudge through this and shoot good groups and kill animals. I had shot good groups. I had killed a few animals, not doing what I had been now learned. But that's where I direct people. And so that it's interesting how I kind of pick those things up. But even me going to Total Archery Challenge, that was super helpful of getting around others. And that is a massive challenge and a roadblock that I put in front of myself. And I've done this my whole life, is I am a lone wolf. And if you listen to like Colin Cottrell, he's just like, dude, don't do that. Don't go out on your own. And so I've hunted alone a lot. I've been like that solo hunter, and you kind of get grumbly, kind of like, don't talk to me, and I've had to battle that myself. And so get out of yourself, at least with one other person. You don't have to go to the big groups and the big shoots and the, just get with one other person. Just like, hey, can you just watch me for a second? And just break down that barrier if you're a bit of a lone wolf like me.
I like it. I like it. And I would definitely agree. Getting around other people helps you learn. And, you know, there was something I heard today. I'm going to butcher the quote, but basically, when you find someone smarter than you or better than you at whatever it is, work with them.
Yeah.
And just soak in the knowledge. Just observe and figure out how you can get better at that thing. Be open to it, of course. And that's interesting that you were stating that you were raised with a narcissist. That can definitely be hard for anyone. No one wants to admit they're wrong. No one wants to even think that their way is wrong. Especially, what makes it worse is, you've killed multiple animals that way. There's old heads that have been just punching the crap out of a trigger, and their draw length is too short, that have killed massive bulls and deer, and things like that. There's people that are way overweight that are killing elk, and you may come out of the woods that you're like, I just hiked how many miles in how many days and I didn't see one elk. And you walk up to the trailhead and there's a dude with an elk in the back of his trailer, and he was driving his Razor around and happened to come across him. It can, stuff like that can get frustrated and make you second guess the learning process. But what I always recommend to people is, and what I try and do myself, is when I look around in my circle of friends and people that I spend the most amount of time with, the majority of them are better at me at something. And it's not that, it's not that you're trying to use other people. You obviously need to contribute as well to that group, and don't drag them down. But just being around those people and being okay with saying, I'm not the best and I want to be around the best, and being okay with that. That's, it takes humility, but also you will improve drastically if you do that in whatever aspect. Again, fitness, archery, hunting, hiking, being a better dad, being better at finances, being better at whatever it is that you're trying to be better at. Find someone that you can spend time with, and you will just naturally find that your habits change based on that.
Yeah, a good litmus test for that is, if you look around, the 5 people you spend the most time with, look at all the things they're doing as a father, in their careers, where they're at in their careers, maybe not comparing salaries so much, but just kind of for that in their journeys. And you're like, man, I spend the most time with you last 5-10 years. You will find that you're in that same kind of merry-go-round. And maybe it's a good merry-go-round. Maybe things are going really well and you don't want to get off that ride. But it will be very, very similar. And even health. I know when I spend time around more healthy people, I'm like, oh, dang, I need to level up. And the ones that are like, oh man, no, dude, it's too early. Like, you don't need to go out. Like Skylar Harrison, he freaking texted me the other day and he's like, hey man, 6 a.m. up on the mountain, let's go. And I got the text late, and life's a little nutty right now, which is a pretty great excuse. Awesome. Good job, Adam. But I ended up not going with him. And I now know, I'm like, you know what, Skylar, like, he's there and he's going to, like, hey man, I'm there with you, let's go out. And it's people like that I want to be around. And, a interesting quick story about Skylar. Last July, my dad passed away, and I kind of put it out on social media and stuff. And he was one of the first people to message me. And he says, where's the funeral? And I was like, oh, okay. And it's down South Salt Lake. I mean, it's probably 45 an hour from him. And he was there. I mean, he was just there. And I just remember like losing it. And I was just like, what are you doing here? And he's like, you're my friend. And that's what friends do. And that was just one of the coolest things, where it's like, that's who I want to be around. And so always kind of gut check yourself of like, what are the people doing around me? What are they doing? And do I want to be doing that?
Exactly. I couldn't agree with you more. It's, I guess value exchange is what it boils down to in any relationship, whether that's a business relationship, whether that's a friendship. What are you providing? Why do people want to be around you? But also, you want to be able to gain from other people as well, without just take, right? Are you a consumer? or are you a, what's the word? I guess provider, but there's another word for it where like a builder, basically. Are you
Mm-hmm.
building? Are you adding? Are you contributing? Or are you just taking, right, from your relationships? And so I couldn't agree with you more on that. So with that, you talked about having a coach, going back to the archery bow hunter situation. You've been open to feedback. You are open to feedback. And I can't reiterate that enough, that you need to be open to feedback. No matter how many years you've been shooting, if you want to improve, maybe you don't want to improve. If you don't want to improve, then this isn't the podcast for you. But if you want to get better, then that's definitely something that I would recommend. And again, Adam and I are people that and I'll volunteer Adam, and I know he'd volunteer me as well. But we're people that you can reach out to. I love having those conversations. I love it when people reach out to me on social media, and it's one of my pet peeves where they're like, "Man, I know you're busy." And I'm like, "Dude, I'm never too busy to get back to someone that's got an actual question."
Yeah.
That's something that for me, and I'll send back a video message even, and
Yeah.
and that just blows people's minds when you do that, because they're like, "Whoa,"
Yeah.
and but it's just that interaction where you get to actually provide that feedback, and if I don't know something, I'm like, I know someone that does, and I'll point you in that
Sure.
direction, and I even let them know you're coming their way. I'll give you a
That's awesome.
little handshake or a handoff, and and that's something that I love, building those relationships and building those friendships and helping people, seeing people improve. It fills my bucket whenever I see people growing and improving and doing it the right way, and learning and sharing. And again, just like with you and your podcast, knowing that you're out there sharing with other people, helping other people get better on a regular basis, just that I don't know, I love it. I absolutely love it. So with that, what do you do with first generation bow hunter, I guess, to help other people when they reach out to you? What's a typical, I guess, someone that reaches out to you kind of conversation?
Yeah. Um, I get very long messages. I don't know why per se, but they give me a lot of background, and
Mm.
they say like, I'm the only one in my family who does this, and they just give me this really young background, and I really like that. I like the context versus, hey man, what's the best bow?
Mm.
It's like, so it is a very niche community that exists here, and so but yeah, so I'll get questions, like I will get that question, like, hey man, I'm shopping for used bows. One, is that okay? Do I have to buy a new bow? And two, what do you recommend? And so
Mm.
we'll have some of that. Sometimes it's just, hey man, I just want you to know that like you really impacted me positively in this way. And man, I'll tell you, I did not want to pick up the bow again. I've been getting really frustrated, and I hear that a lot. And one thing, KSL, but KSL is local listings classifieds. It's like Facebook Marketplace, but like immensely better. It's very, very incredible, and you can actually sell weapons, bows. You can't on Facebook Marketplace. But I was on there, and I was just feeling this weird inspiration one day, and I was just like, one thing that happens is a phenomenon where guys will go through the season, they don't see any success, and then they sell their bow.
Mm.
And so I put out this listing. You couldn't buy anything. It was just a listing. And I got on Canva and I wrote, "Don't sell your bow," like in big letters, overlaid onto an image of like my son holding his bow. And I go off on this big message and I said, I know what it feels like right now. You weren't successful, and I blah, 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 blah. And I was like, don't sell your bow. Just give it another season. And I said, and if I can help you, go listen to First Generation Bowhunter. And it's, it was kind of an ad for my podcast, but more of I'm just here. Like, I totally understand how you're feeling, because that's what they do. They go on classifieds, they see what their bow's going for, and then they price it out. Simple, right? And oh my gosh, I got so many messages. People are just like, holy crap, and I'm a marketer. It's what I do for a living. So I understand people's pain points and motivations and fears. And but it was just kind of a cool thing. And so I kind of built off that. So people will ask me like, dude, I'm stuck. Like I've been out, I don't know what's going on. But then I get the guys who are like, dude, I just shot this massive 8-point, and it's my first hunt, my first everything. And I'm like, okay, well, that's rare. Good on you. I'm glad you saw that success. And that's awesome. And so I can kind of celebrate their wins too. One guy reached out and was like, I think your journey of your career is really interesting. I'm just kind of curious if you could lean into that a little bit more. So one of my latest episodes was just that. I just walked people through like, here's what I've done. And it didn't do as well, maybe as like an archery focus. It was a bit more about myself. But I did try to relay it back, and he was like, you did a whole episode just on one question. Like, what the heck? Like, I couldn't believe it when I got in my car and I see there was a new episode. It was like dedicated. Like, I dedicated it to him. I said, here's the question. This is for you, blah, blah, blah. And it just impacted one person. I felt like it is worth it. I'm small enough where I can be that nimble, and I don't have sponsors who are like, talk about this and don't say that and don't mention that other brand. Like, I'm a bit of a free agent. And so that's how I approach it. And I really love it that way. It's been super beneficial, I believe, to others.
That's awesome. I love it. I love hearing stories like that. And again, I love the fact that you've leaned into an insecurity that you had and are able to share with others and to be able to help them understand their own insecurities a little bit better and their own experience through archery and bow hunting. It's, there's so much free information out there now. You mentioned the School of Knock with Dudley. There's plenty of other information out there, and it's become pretty easy to tell who is sold by a certain company and who isn't. And what's interesting to me is people like Dudley, or I keep going back to Dan Staton because he was a big influence for me, recognizing people that weren't just saying you have to buy this bow because that's their sponsor. Obviously Dudley is, part of PSE. Prior to that, though, he's worked with Matthews and Hoyt, and he never says that you have to shoot a PSE whenever he's instructing, his videos or giving. He's not like, well, with a PSE, you can shoot better groups. Like, he's never like that, right? He's like, he's all about technique. And he even breaks down, like, yes, obviously he's trying to sell his releases, but he breaks down why that release is set up the way that it is. And it may not be the best for everyone, but for him and his particular shooting style and the coach that he had at the time, this is why the Knock to It release is his preferred release. Same with Dan. Everyone knows Dan's sponsored by Matthews. Prior to that, he was Hoyt, but he just like, you know what, dude, I just want you to shoot a bow and I want you to shoot it well. Obviously it'd be cool if you shot a Matthews like me, but that doesn't matter. Like, he just wants you to get out and shoot. And so finding people like that is definitely important. So like yourself and, just again, being able to have those conversations without feeling like there's some kind of bias to a particular item, or thing. I try and handle conversations very similarly where people ask me, hey, you shoot this or you do that. Like, yeah, but you don't have to. Like, what are what are you aiming to do and what is your budget? And there's always something within that you can find to be able to maximize, the budget that you've got. And again, based on, you may not need a slider sight if you're shooting whitetail, right? If you're just a whitetail hunter, you probably don't need a slider sight. If you're never going to attack, probably don't need it. And even going to tack, you can learn how to pin stack, which is something that I've recently learned how to do so I can help my 17-year-old with his fixed sight, because I'm not just going to give him a nice sight to start off with. So he's got a fixed pin sight, and he's learned how to pin stack, and he can shoot 60, 70 yards when his bottom pin is 40. And he's been able to get some pretty good shots based on that. And so, there's so much information out there that it's just, it's just there's a wealth of knowledge out there that you can soak in without having to to feel like you're missing out on anything. So that's definitely awesome. So with that, you work for BlackOvis Camo Fire now. I guess let's dive into that a little bit because BlackOvis is a partner of the show as well. So you work for him. You could say I work for him. We're partners. Yep. But let's talk a little bit about that. What is BlackOvis? what is Camo Fire for people that may not know? What are those companies?
Yeah, for sure. So Camo Fire was started at the end of 2008, and we all remember 2008 was the big housing crash. And
Mm-hmm.
I love the story that Kendall tells. He always says, like, man, it was probably the worst time to start a company. But Camo Fire was built on this idea that one deal a day, there was going to be one product that you could buy for a deeply discounted rate. And one of the big pain points with hunting gear is it's just friggin' expensive. And so they had this idea of let's go see if we can like make this work and make it, you know, a running business. And so it did. It really took off, and I believe it took off so much because of the housing crash that people were like, oh my gosh, I still want to go hunting. I'm not going to not go hunting. And we saw that with 2020 as well, where it was like people still wanted to go travel. They still wanted to go somewhere. So those Disneyland dollars had to go to something. So that's why it went to bikes and outdoor and RVs. So that's a bit, you know, it's one deal a day. And then they're like, man, that's sold out at 6 a.m. We still have all these hours left in the day. So they started doing one deal a day, but then they would add a new product once one sold out. It was a very manual process. And so then they're like, well, man, maybe we can do like more deals. And so they started expanding the deals. So now it got to 80 deals a day. It's a different landscape now because, in my opinion, the rise in Facebook Marketplace and the rise in like the used market, I think is a bit of a challenge as like a Camo Fire, because someone's like, well, I can go get like a slightly used this or that, you know, and still save money, right? But what's interesting about Camo Fire is it's this cool community of hunters who are just kind of all in it for the, you know, the same mission and that type of thing. But we'll get wind of products that might be brand new to the market that a company is like, man, I really want to get this in front of a cool audience. You know, so they look at Camo Fire in that way, not just offering a really good deal. So people come to us like in the behind the scenes for different reasons. But yeah, I mean, we've had strong relationships with companies like Sitka and the big camo brands and GSM brands like AVNX. And so people come to us a lot for turkey and that type of thing. So it's pretty fun. We're always making changes. We've made a few recent updates that I think are actually pretty fun and have been responded well of how we've seen it in the analytics. Then years after Camo Fire, BlackOvis came, and it was more of that online traditional retailer. And it was very thoughtful in the sense of we are offering that really kind of higher end specialized product. It's stuff that if we wouldn't take in our backpack, we're not going to put it on the website. And it was very much done in that mindset, along with the BlackOvis brand being launched as well. So merino, some equipment like tripods, trekking poles, head to toe merino base layers, and then also expanding into like the pant program. One of my favorite pants for archers, the 3D pant. You can actually have a pocket where you slip arrows into the side of the pocket. And so for tack, it's just like the best. It's epic. And it's a little bit more of that harsher fabric that can handle a little bit more beating up. We only do solids, and that's very strategic. We know other people do camo, and they're very good at that. We do solids, and we do it well. So we go really deep into solids versus, well, we're going to try to do everything and be everything to everyone. But we kind of double down on solids. Our glove program is actually really strong as well. We have all these different types of variations of gloves. My favorite thing, especially for whitetail hunters, is this muff. You put it around your waist like a fanny pack, and you just shove your hands into it, and you can do hand warmers and things. And dude, I've taken naps with my hands in that thing, and it's cool. So I sit right next to the product team. They're always coming up with something else. They're like, hey man, what do you think of this and that? And, you know, and it's a very dynamic conversation that we have. So there's Camo Fire, there's BlackOvis, and then there's BlackOvis branded products. And so kind of, you know, three different things going on, but BlackOvis in itself is just like that place where it's highly curated, thoughtful, solid hunting gear that, you know, we would recommend to a very, very close friend. And that's how we make the approach, is that everyone who calls in, everyone who interacts with us is like, all right, let us help. How can we help? Let's get you to that right piece. So it's been great. I've been there a year, and yeah, thankful to work with you. And I know we've had some cool things going back and forth. And there's a lot ahead that we're really excited for around events and doing some films this year. I'm really excited about the films we're doing, because we're kind of taking an approach of like, we may not be out there shooting trophies, but that's okay. And the film you might watch that we put out is maybe me, and I'm shooting a 2-point. And as a first generation bow hunter or somebody who's new, I am like flying high, like this is the most exciting thing ever. And so we're leaning into that just a little bit, versus hey, it's got to be in Alaska, it's got to be this, it's got to be so remote, so so we're I'm excited about what we have on deck this year.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and guys, I'll say it too. The stuff that BlackOvis puts out, even though the BlackOvis branded gear is outstanding. I love the lightweight pant. I've got the puffy. That thing's like a furnace. I'm trying to remember what the name of that one is, but the heavier
Point.
Weight one, Anchor Point.
Or the Recon. There's 2 now.
It's the 800. I think it's 800 grams of insulation.
Yeah, probably the Anchor Point. The Recon is actually a waterproof down, which just came out last year.
That might be it, because I think that's because it's got the different colored shoulder and hood.
Oh, that's the Recon, right? And that thing is a furnace. Yes,
dude. Let me tell you, that thing is that thing will keep you warm. So that's great for some later season. The puffy pants as well, to be able to zip up and throw over your pants when you're out there glassing. Maybe you've been sweating it up the mountain, and then you want to throw something on to be able to sit down and enjoy a glassing experience. And those are awesome. And then of course the merinos. Absolutely love the merinos. I love that it's more of that, because there's the traditional merino that's a little bit more, I wouldn't say maybe stiff, or can be really stretchy, but doesn't come back to its normal form after you've used it for a day or two. The merino that you guys have is outstanding. It's got that stretch, more of an athletic fit, but it's also got the merino properties of the wicking the moisture and the antimicrobial style. So those are all things that I highly recommend to people. It's definitely just a great product. Also, you guys sell some, my favorite boots, which are the crispy boots. You've got multiple other boots as well for people that maybe don't have wide hobbit feet like me and can fit into some of the other boots that are a little bit more narrow and technical. But you guys just have a wealth of things, from glass to boots to puffies to merino layers. I mean, you've got everything over there at BlackOvis. So I highly recommend that people go over there and check that out. If anything, just to look through gear, because it is just a plethora of options.
Yeah.
And so so we've talked about, let's see, archery, kind of your journey through that, BlackOvis, camo fire. Is there anything else that you want to maybe direct people to, other than, obviously I'll leave your link down below for the podcast where people can reach out to you, etc. But anything else we haven't talked about that you wanted to hit on?
The last thing I was going to mention was ice baths. So I've been doing those for about 2 years now, and it's kind of funny. I think I saw it like on Instagram one day, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." 2 minutes later, I'm buying a tank, filling it with water in the backyard, like not even thinking of like how to do this. I was just like, "Oh, that's kind of interesting." I didn't even research the benefits. I was just like, "Oh, that's interesting." And so I'm in there, I'm jumping in. My wife's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I think it's for recovery or something sciencey." And that night, I mean, dude, 10:30 hit and I zonked out, like unbelievable. And the reason why I bring up ice baths is less of the shock and awe of like, "Oh, look, I do ice baths and it's so funny on Instagram," but more of like, as men and women, like as we get into these older ages, we've got to really watch our health close. And ice baths it does have benefits. Like, I'm not going to sell people on that, but the second ring of benefits maybe per se is thinking like, I've got to do an ice bath today, but maybe I'm going to drink just a little bit less soda, right? Because I'm shifting my mindset as I'm not an unhealthy person anymore, right?
Right.
And so for me, an ice bath is also a symbol of that's just something that I do, but it helps me make decisions later in the day of what I'm going to do and not do. Just last week, I had a kind of a major health scare, and I found myself in the instant care getting a CT scan, and I found some things that I've got to address, and it kind of woke me up a little bit. But in the same vein, I'm also like, I've been doing these ice baths and trying to make good decisions. But what happened was I have diverticulitis. I'm getting better at saying it. But that means like 10 years ago, there could have been something bad that has caused that. And so like poor choices a decade ago is coming out to me now. And it's eye-opening. It's like, whoa, okay. We think everything is so short-term, I think, with our health, like do this, I get that, that kind of thing. But ice baths have been interesting, especially on the mental side of like, you get in that thing, and every time I do it, I kind of yelp, and I'm in the backyard now, and I'm like, and I never get used to it. And so the people who do it in the ads on Instagram, they're like, oh, calm and serendipitous. It's like, dude, that's probably 70-degree water. Like, it's so bogus because you don't feel that. Like it. And I hope that never goes away. I hope I never get used to it because I really do like it, and just did one about an hour ago in prep for this. But the other thing too is just tackling difficult things. And I think bow hunting has really helped me slow down and go through those difficult situations. And an ice bath is a nice like pairing of that. And surprisingly, and not too many people like care about this, and when I tell you what I'm about to tell you, but yoga has helped me more in my bow hunting, and it actually helped me calm down because I was getting in that moment where I'm pulled back and I'm like, freaking out. And I went and I was like, I'm going to do yoga. And I went to the yoga teacher. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I need to shoot animals with my bow. And she's like, oh, okay, let's work on that. I mean, it was just like the most bizarre. And so I'm the only guy in there, and I'm like all mountain ops out right at the time. And it worked. I did a whole episode of it. It was the second episode I did on the show because I feel so strong about it. But yeah, pretty interesting. Just a few little tidbits to leave you with there.
Well, so I guess let's that is an interesting topic there, because I did listen to a podcast recently and I love, because Joel Turner's been on the podcast, and since he's been on the podcast, there's been some evolutions in his teaching, and I love hearing as he progresses what he's learning. And it's not even necessarily that things are changing, it's just the way he explains it is becoming even better and better and better. And he has a particular way of explaining things that's really, it's almost too good to be true. Like, he's just an excellent teacher. And one of the phrases that I love that he says is, thoughts are not thinking. And I'll let that one sink in for a minute, because I've said it a couple times on the podcast now, but he says that thoughts are not thinking. And I've even started implementing that into my parenting with my kids. Because when I ask my kids, hey, why'd you do that? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, then don't do it. If you don't know why you're doing it, then don't do it, And then, but recently he's something that I heard him say, it was a couple of days ago, where he was like, oh, what exactly was it? It was, every time you draw your bow back, it's like a mini panic attack. And I was just sitting there thinking, I'm like, what do you like? Because I've never dealt with panic attacks. I've felt anxiety every once in a while, but I've never even really been an anxious person. I've always been fine getting up and speaking in front of people, like things like that. But I almost like, I've learned that the feelings that I get, how to embrace it, and it becomes a good thing, rather than taking those anxious feelings and being like, oh my gosh, this is crazy, I'm speaking, blah, blah, blah. And he talks about how whenever you're at full draw on an animal, you're having a mini panic attack, because the first thing that you have to do, if you do calm down, is breathe. And it's the same with panic attacks, where people start to lose control of motor functions and stuff, and they get in their head. And he's like, all you have to do is zoom out a little bit and realize, I'm not dying right now. I'm okay. Take a breath. And then you zoom out a little bit more, and you're like, okay, wow, this really isn't that big of a problem. And he obviously explains it a lot better. But you bring up yoga and the panic that happens when you draw back on an animal. yoga helped you. It helped you. Obviously, there's a lot of breathing involved in yoga because you're in these awkward poses that are uncomfortable. You have to learn how to get comfortable in these uncomfortable poses, and the mobility and flexibility you gain from doing yoga. Uh, it's all of that is again mindset, and goes back to the ice bath. Same thing. You have to learn how to breathe through that shock of getting into cold water. And you may say you're not getting used to it, but I guarantee you handle it and recover from that shock a lot faster than people that are doing it for the first time.
Yeah.
And it's because you've learned the breathing that goes along with that. So just to wrap it up here, for people that maybe do experience, panic attacks, quote unquote, or the target panic whenever they draw back on an animal, maybe it's a paper target for you, or maybe it's both. How have you learned to overcome that through your experience of basically self-teaching?
Yeah, it's a great question. What I do is I go in with a very clear intention of what I'm about to do and what result that I want. And I'm a secret guy. I love The Secret. I'm a huge fan of it. I think it's still on Netflix. It's the Oprah promoted this many years ago. It's worth a watch. It really is, because it helps you look around yourself of what you are attracting, and you could be like, wow, yep, that's why I'm having all these bad days. That's why I'm having all these bad things. I'm just attracting it. And so my wife and I both went in on this together, and we're just like, we're just going to attract what we truly are after. And man, I got to tell you, it absolutely works. And so I've done that in bow hunting. And I learned this. I think I caught a line from Meat Eater. Stephen Ranella said this, how he's talking about not getting excited. And he says, you can get excited after the shot. Don't get excited before the shot. And that stuck with me. It was in an episode. And so when I go in and I'm pulled back, I'm just thinking, I'm going to kill this animal with this arrow. So when I release, that is going to happen. And I calm myself way down. And you think about when we do these things, like in a stressful driving situation in traffic, or difficult situation with somebody or whatnot, we're doing it with the mindset of, well, I'm going through it. I'm trying to get to something else. I actually have a goal in this. I'm not just sitting in this crappy situation for the sake of it. And I do the same thing with like the 3Ds or the paper targets. I'm thinking, I want that arrow to go right there. And that's what I'm going to go after. And if it doesn't, great, check the sight, whatever. But I know my breathing is in check because I just have that goal. And dude, I'm telling you, that was one of the things that just tipped me over, because I probably missed 3 or 4 animals before I hit an animal. And it was due to that reason. It was that last little bit to the finish line where it doesn't matter what bow you're shooting, what arrows you're shooting. If you get to that point and you're just like a mess, you could have the most expensive bow. It doesn't matter. So that's what's worked for me, and I know it can help others. I truly do.
All right. Well, that's real interesting, and I do love that. It's focusing on just being determined that you're going to make the shot happen, and being in control of that. And then you've obviously had enough repetitions behind the bow to know what that process is. It's something that, going back to Joel Turner, it's a variation of what he says is, no matter what, I'm making this shot happen. It's going to be a good shot no matter what. That's exactly, what you're saying is, I'm going to make the arrow go here no matter what, or it's going to go there, whatever it is that you put through your head, and your body just knows those mechanics because you've done it so much. It works, and you're able to repeat that. So I think that's a great place to end it. Is just being determined, making sure you have your shot process down, or whatever process it is that you're aiming for, whatever you're looking to do. Obviously, we're talking archery, being a first generation bow hunters, and that's something that we want for you guys. So where can people find you? And then I'll leave those links down below so that people can reach out to you.
Yeah, for sure. Instagram is Adam_Buchanan. Buchanan, just like the president. Yep. And then LinkedIn, surprisingly, is kind of big. A lot of people reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's where I get a lot of email, like messages and whatnot. So Instagram and LinkedIn are the best. So yeah, come find me and let's talk bow hunting.
Awesome. And of course, the show is on Spotify, Apple. Are you on
It's
YouTube?
everywhere. Not on YouTube. No.
Well,
But I
that's where we
know
need to go
you're
next.
really
We're going to get him on YouTube, guys.
you're really good at that. I saw how you're set up that way, and props to you. And I think I did 1 or 2 episodes, and I need to figure out the automation there and set that up. So that's
Awesome.
my homework. I will do it.
Perfect. Awesome, guys. I'm going to leave the links down below so you can find First Generation Bowhunter and Adam Buchanan over there on LinkedIn, Instagram, and of course, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. If you want to go tune into his episodes, he's had some amazing guests on, and of course, his solo episodes are really well done as well. With that being said, thanks so much for tuning in today, guys. As always, get out, live your life, and love it. Man, that was an awesome conversation with Adam. I absolutely love talking with him. Anytime I get a chance to get him on the phone, or in this case, record a conversation with him, really exciting stuff. He's just a great dude. He's going through the journey just like you and me, learning as he goes. And of course, he's surrounding himself with amazing people as he works over there at BlackOvis and has conversations on First Generation Bowhunter. So highly recommend going and checking him out. I will leave the links down below where you can find Adam. Reach out to him if you're interested in anything that he has going on. Like I said, guys, in previous parts of this episode, highly recommend going over to BlackOvis, checking out the gear they have available. Everything from their own labeled gear, which their pants are some of my favorite, along with the shorts, the cottonwood shorts. Fantastic, guys. You should definitely go check them out, especially with it being such a hot summer right now. Also, get your crispy boots on sale. All of that being under the umbrella of RedBeard 10. So go check it out. BlackOvis.com. Use code RedBeard10. Save you some money. Get your last minute gear purchases. And last but not least, guys, I am doing a giveaway on a bow, but we're changing it up a little bit. And you guys are going to be the first to know about this. And if you want to know more details about it, get in on the email list. I will leave that link down below. But we're giving away the PSE Omen with a backup set of strings, along with close to $4,000 worth of gear. Guys, this is huge. It's the biggest giveaway I've done up to this point, even bigger than the Everything But a Bow giveaway that we did last month. I'm excited to share that with you guys. Go get tuned into that. It's down below. I'll feed you more information through email, and you can get the chance to win a new bow and pretty much a whole hunting setup. So go check it out, guys. I'll see you over there. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And of course, get out, live your life, and love it.